Welcome to this week's edition of the ATN Weekly News Roundup. I am Favor Ofam, bringing you the top stories that shaped the world, Africa, and Nigeria. Beginning with the headlines. United States completes withdrawal from the World Health Organization. Venezuelan Nobel laureate presents Peace Prize medal to President Trump. Guinea's military leader, Mamadi Doumbouya, sworn in as president. Japan's prime minister dissolves parliament, calls snap election. Netflix shares slide as investor confidence wavers. Russia and the U.S. outline next steps in security talks over Ukraine. Family of Sydney Harbour shark attack victim brace for tragic outcome. Uganda's military chief issues ultimatum to opposition leader Bobi Wine. Nigeria plans satellite to phone service for 23 million underserved citizens. Senegal coach defends dramatic AFCON final walk-off. Those were the headlines, the news in detail. The United States family completed its withdrawal from the World Health Organization. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed the decision, ending nearly 8 decades of U.S. membership since the World Health Organization's founding in 1948. The administration cited what it described as the organization's failures during the COVID-19 pandemic. Although President Donald Trump had signaled similar intentions during his first term, the move marked the first full exit by Washington from the United Nations health body, raising concerns about the future of international disease surveillance and cooperation. Through a symbolic gesture at the White House, Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado presented her medal to President Donald Trump. She described the moment as historic for Venezuelans, framing the act as recognition of Trump's role in advancing her country's freedom following the arrest of President Nicolas Maduro on U.S. drug trafficking charges. While Trump praised the exchange as an act of mutual respect, the Nobel Committee clarified that the prize itself remains non-transferable. In West Africa, Guinea entered a new political chapter as General Mamadi Doumbouya was sworn in as president after winning last month's election. Doumbouya, who seized power in a 2021 military takeover, secured more than 86% of the votes, according to the Supreme Court. The election was the first since the coup, though it was marred by boycotts and the absence of key opposition figures who remain in exile. Critics pointed to Doumbouya's earlier pledge not to run as a promise he later abandoned. In Asia, Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi dissolved parliament just 3 months into her tenure, triggering a snap election scheduled for February 8. The move was widely seen as an attempt to capitalize on her strong approval ratings, which hovered near 70%, following her historic election as Japan's first female leader. However, the decision delayed parliamentary approval of a critical budget aimed at tackling inflation and reviving the economy. news that global markets were rattled as Netflix shares fell sharply, dropping more than 10% in a single day. The decline followed a cautious outlook for the coming quarter, which unsettled investors despite a strong slate of upcoming releases, including the final season of Stranger Things. After years of consistent outperformance that saw its stock surge more than 360%, the streaming giant showed signs that its extraordinary run may be cooling. On the diplomatic front, Russia confirmed plans for security talks with the United States and Ukraine in Abu Dhabi, following lengthy late-night discussions between President Vladimir Putin and U.S. envoys. Kremlin officials described the talks as candid and constructive, but stressed that no lasting peace would be possible without resolving territorial disputes. While investment and security channels were opened, Moscow stopped short of signaling any major breakthrough. In Australia, a community in Sydney remained in mourning after a 12-year-old boy who was attacked by a shark in Sydney Harbour succumbed to devastating injuries. The incident, which occurred at a popular harbour beach, shocked the nation and prompted renewed debate over marine safety in urban waterways. Tributes poured in as the family prepared for what supporters described as the worst possible outcome. Now, on to news coming in from Africa. We have news that political tensions escalated in Uganda after the country's military chief, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, issued a 48-hour ultimatum to opposition leader Bobi Wine to surrender to authorities. Wine, a former pop star turned politician, went into hiding after a military raid on his home shortly before President Yoweri Museveni was declared the winner of the presidential election. Wine alleged widespread electoral fraud, while international observers raised concerns about intimidation and political repression. In Nigeria, the communications regulator unveiled ambitious plans to extend mobile coverage to more than 23 million underserved citizens using satellite-to-phone technology. The Nigerian Communications Commission said the initiative would allow standard smartphones to connect directly to satellites, bypassing the need for traditional cell towers. The proposal followed findings from a national connectivity gap study and is expected to transform access in remote and rural communities, pending stakeholder consultations. News coming in from the world of sports has it that drama spilled beyond the pitch at the African Cup of Nations final as Senegalese coach Pape Thiaw defended his team's temporary walk-off during the decisive match against Morocco. Senegal players left the pitch in stoppage time after a controversial penalty decision, moments after a potential winning goal was disallowed. Thiaw later described the incident as an emotional response rather than defiance. Senegal eventually returned to play, won the match in extra time, and lifted the trophy, though disciplinary actions are still expected. Now that is it on this week's news roundup. Join us again next weekend for the top stories shaping the world, Africa, and Nigeria. I am Favor Ofam. Thank you so much for watching.